to put this up here. Oopsies. No, I'm fine. Okay. So, RxJS. How many of you guys use RxJS? A lot of you. That's good to hear. How many of you guys have wanted to learn RxJS and maybe haven't yet? I have one hand. Two hands. One. Don't be shy. It's okay. So I'm going to talk about the part of RxJS today in NativeScript and Angular. Very excited about it. So just a little summary about what RxJS is. I'm sure you guys use it and you know the functionality, but I'm going to give you a few more definitions that you can sort of wrap your heads around. So RxJS is a push-based primitive in JavaScript, first and foremost. It's also the reference implementation for the TC39 observable proposal, which is currently at stage 1. It's going to be moving soon, which is really exciting, a little bit of a push from the Google team. It's a domain-specific language that sits on top of JavaScript, and I love this because it's declarative and it's really easy if you put your application logic in RxJS to refactor things. So I have definitely refactored this specific application quite a few times in other languages. It's also the only external dependency to Angular 2x, and the reason that's important is because in NativeScript, that means since Angular is a first-class citizen, you just get RxJS. You don't have to npm install. And then, of course, it is really easy to use RxJS to chain together complex interactions once you understand what it's actually doing and how to use it. So a little history of RxJS. RxJS was originally written by Matt Podwasaki at Microsoft. That was RxJS 4. A lot of people are still using RxJS 4 now. But then Ben Lesh came along, and while he was at Netflix, he rewrote all of RxJS, and that became RxJS 5. And RxJS 5 is sort of what we know and love today. So RxJS is adopted by tons of companies everywhere, but it really wouldn't have happened if it wasn't for these two guys' work and all the other amazing open source contributors. So it's used in a lot of large companies, too many to name. Some great examples would be Google, Slack, Facebook, Microsoft, Netflix, and quite a few others. Way too many to fit on this slide over here. If you look at the GitHub status, it's been growing over the past 2 years. So it has over 600,000 weekly downloads currently. So definitely being adopted by a lot of people. React community loves it. I know there's a Vue Rx as well, and obviously Angular loves it too. So even for people who I see using RxJS a lot, there are sort of two major components to think about, and sometimes the verbiage gets a little jumbled, right? Because, you know, what's a switch map, concat map, flat map? I don't know. But anyways, two major components in RxJS, observables and observers. So a few things to note about how they work. So these observables are the things that are actually giving you the data, and observers, you can think of them as observing. They're actually the things that are receiving the data. So observables are actually just functions in JavaScript. So just like functions don't do anything until you call them, observables aren't going to do anything until you actually subscribe to them. Observables are always going to be observed by observers. And subscribing to an observable, what that does is it basically sets up a chain of observation using observers. So hopefully that sinks in a little bit and you guys can think about that. A lot of people have this misconception that RxJS is just used for async, but it's actually can be used for synchronous values as well. So if you think about it, right, observables are just push-based primitives that push values at you. So they're mostly asynchronous because they do things over time, like waiting for an event, maybe someone clicking something, maybe somebody, they're waiting for somebody to make an AJAX request to the server. But great examples of synchronous observables would be observable of, which this is just going to give you back whatever you pass into the argument, or observable from, which converts an array or a promise or an iterable into an observable. So my name's Tracy. You can follow me on Twitter at LadyElite. Ask me questions. Always happy to help. I'm a speaker, Google developer expert. I love JavaScript, so I play around with a lot of different things like Angular, React, RxJS, React Native, NativeScript now, my new favorite baby. I'm a co-founder of this.media and this.labs. This.labs, we just recently launched a program to basically help women junior developers get jobs in the industry. And we do this by pairing them with awesome mentors. Most of our mentors are core contributors of the different frameworks and libraries. So if you're interested in hiring women and working with amazing people, let me know. On the media side, we do things like host this.javascript, where we basically do like state of JavaScript and things like that. Next year, we'll be doing a state of mobile, where we'll be inviting people like Ionic and NativeScript and Cordova to come talk. So I also do a little bit of tech writing on my Medium and also on Modern Web, and there's a podcast, Modern Web, which hopefully some of you guys find amusing, but that has pretty good content. And then I love being able to mentor junior developers as well. So a little story about RxJS. This is what it looked like after 3 hours of trying to learn RxJS at a coffee shop. Ben was really happy. I don't know why, because he had to sit through me crying. So learning RxJS can be really, really, really hard, and this is sort of where this talk came about. So as a beginner, I had a few troubles. One of them was when I was looking on the internet, like, where are the docs? Which docs am I looking at? Am I looking at 4? Am I looking at 5? Stack Overflow, is this referencing 4 or 5? I have no idea. It was really frustrating, especially when you don't have like my Ben, I call him my Ben doc. So if you don't have Ben, who wrote the library, sitting next to you, things are a little more difficult. So also, I didn't know which operators to use. So since I didn't have Ben sitting next to me telling me that I need to use, switch map or concat map or merge or whatever, I had a really hard time sifting through what the heck any of this was. So I pounded my head over it for a while, and once I actually did figure out how everything worked, and I thought my code was perfect, I spent about 3 hours being really frustrated because my code didn't work. And it was because I forgot to subscribe. So frustrating. Anyways, that didn't happen again. So today we're going to go through a few things. We're going to go through how to create an observable, best practices for importing and using RxJS, how to choose operators, find documentation, how to avoid unwanted subscriptions, the benefits of same-shapedness and why RxJS is so powerful, and then what's coming for RxJS 6 and 7. Really excited about these things. So let's just go through how to create an observable first. This is the most basic way to create an observable. It's just using the observable constructor. So here what we're doing is we're creating a new observable. We're giving it a function that gives us an observer when we subscribe to the observable. So the observer has methods. Any observers have methods next, errand, complete on them. So that allows you to emit values from your observable. There are tons of other observable creation methods, observable from event, observable of, observable from, but under the hood, all of these are just using the observable constructor. So even though you can find a lot of RxJS helpers to do this, if you ever get stuck, just use the observable constructor. It's perfectly fine. Observable from is probably one to take note of. And remember, this actually converts an array, a promise, or an iterable into an observable. And observable from is part of the TC39 observable spec. So that's why most of you guys, hopefully we get it in the browser soon, but we'll see. So I feel like the best way to learn anything is just to build applications. So we're going to go ahead and build a pun app to demo RxJS because I love puns. So the pun app is going to give you a set of puns based on what we type in. So as you can see, it has a search bar. We type in and we can search what type of puns we would like, and then it returns a set of keywords like banana and bird from B, and then it gives me a set of puns. I know it's not that beautiful, but I did this like Saturday. YOLO. Anyway, so the search bar is going to be the most important thing to note since this is the main functionality of our application. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a look-ahead search with RxJS in our app. And this is sort of the idiomatic RxJS example. So let's talk about setting up the application really quickly. We're going to use NativeScript and Angular. And to scaffold up the app, all I did was TNS create name of my application. I used --ng to specify Angular, and then I did TNS run iOS. Of course, you can do TNS run Android, depending on what type of development you're doing. And then the blue screen popped up, and there's a beautiful app for me, and I was so excited. The first thing I did was create a component. So since I'm building a pun app, I created a pun component. It's a basic Angular component, nothing exciting or special. I went ahead and added the component to the router. And I love the router because it's just like the Angular router, so I felt right at home. All I did here was import the component, specify the route, and then change the default path. So the main app component, before I got started with anything, I just configured the main app component. I added an action bar component to sort of permeate throughout my entire application. You can obviously add action bars to your individual components if you like. And then I wrapped the router outlet in a scroll view so it has a parent view at all times. And then, because, you know, if we're basically doing a look at search in a search bar, I needed a search bar. So I added the search bar component using the snippets, Nathan Walker snippets. Thank you, Nathan. You saved my life. So I just typed in NSSE, and then boom, this thing came out for me. Did somebody clap? Yay, Nathan. Yay, snippets. Love the snippets. Okay, so, I mean, I swear, like, snippets are kind of one of the reasons why I was like, wow, this is so easy. Why NativeScript is so easy. Okay, so this is the dummy search bar component, right? And then this is what the search bar sort of looked like in Xcode Simulator for me. I took all that stuff out and then just put everything I needed in it. So let's go ahead and first do one thing. I wire up the submit event. Here I'm using subject, and the subject is called keyword input changes, and I'm using that as the event handler on the submit event. So I'm also adding a template reference variable here to get called keywords to get the text value. And then because we are using a subject, and subject is both an observable and an observer, I'll explain that in a second, and observers have the method next on them, all I'm doing here is just using the next method to push values through our subject to get an observable of those values. So it's great, right? But it's not actually going to work unless you import subject from RxJS. So make sure to not forget to do that in your pun component, or the component that you're using RxJS in, and then adding subject to our component class. So let's go back to what subjects are. So subjects are special because they are observables and observers. And observers have the methods next, error, and complete on them. So because of that, we are able to use that subject and just automatically push values through it by just calling subject.next and then the value. And then because they're also an observable, they have all the operators on them that any other observable would. So also, one thing I learned last Saturday was subjects are actually by default multicast or hot, which is awesome. How many of you guys know what multicast is? All right, I'll go through that in a second too, later on. Okay, so remember also, so I talked about importing subject from RxJS, right? So this is also where a lot of people make mistakes. These are the ways basically you don't want to do it. So you don't want to import all of Rx from RxJS. Making one line and importing multiple types from RxJS, not such a good idea, or importing all types from Rx. What this is going to do is bring in all 60 operators from RxJS, bundle them up, and then ship them to the browser for you. So your app is obviously going to be like much larger than it needs to be. What you do need to do, though, is basically just import the things you need. So import directly from the module path inside the RxJS package. This is going to import the bare bones observable or subject, and it doesn't come with any operators. The operators that you need to use, just in your app module file, just go ahead and add them here, and then they're going to be available to you throughout your entire application. So let's get back to our pun app. We've done something very simple so far. We've just created an observable of text input changes called keyword input changes. But we actually want to compose that into an observable of keywords that we're trying to type into our text box, right? Because otherwise, what's the point? So to do that, we need a data source, of course. So I didn't have time to play around with the HTTP thing, but I created an Angular service called pun service and then just stuck like a huge array of data in there inside YOLO. So over here, I'm just providing the pun service to my app in my app module file, and then I'm injecting it through the constructor in my pun component. So this is what our pun service looks like. So there's two methods on the pun service. There's going to be suggest keywords and get puns. I'm just showing you what the suggest keywords method looks like, since they're basically exactly the same shape. So as somebody types in a set of keywords, we're going and getting a string of keywords from our array of puns in the service, and then trying to figure out what keywords it might actually match. So now what we want to do is we want to go ahead and use our pun service to take the observable of text input changes and return back a list of suggested keywords. So in order to do that, we're just creating a property called keywords here. And then whenever there's a text input change, right, we're basically asynchronously going and getting a set of suggested keywords by calling suggested keywords on our service. And then the suggested keywords method is going to return an observable of arrays of strings, which is suggested keywords. So then what we're doing is we're actually using switch map to change our stream of text input changes into a stream of suggested keywords. You might wonder, why switch map? So that's a good question. Well, what switch map does is it converts the value to a new observable, switches to that observable, and then unsubscribes from any previous ones it might have made. So that's awesome. If you're ever curious about which operators to use, reactivex.io/RxJS are the official documents. And you can, there's this choose your own operator adventure down here. So if you scroll down on the main page, you'll see it. This was implemented by Andre Staltz. And yeah, it's going to recommend the best operator for you to use. So hopefully that's really helpful. Now, we've wired everything up for our application, but we haven't actually written anything out to the view yet. So I'm going to do this using the list view component, and thank you again, Nathan, for having this awesome snippets, VS Code snippets, because I just typed in NS. I just typed in NSL, and then list view, and then it popped up, and this was the dummy. Component that it created for me. So you'll notice inside each of the list view components, ng-template is used to specify the for each. You can use ng-for-of if you want, but doing a for each with list view basically prevents you from creating like all the components immediately. So imagine if you had like 1,000 different results, you don't want that to load. List view is going to allow you to control the number of components created at once to ensure performance. Thanks, Sebastian, for telling me that. And then it's also going to just create the number of components based on what your current app view allows, or whatever you've specified the height of the list view to be. So then as you're scrolling through the items will disappear from the screen, and those are buffered, and then new ones will appear. So there's a lot of stuff there, but it looks cleaner like this. So I basically simplified it, took everything out that I didn't need, and it looks like this. So first off, the list view component tells me to add a data source. So the keywords observable is going to be our data source, right? And then we're basically needing to subscribe to keywords as well. So we're just doing this using pipe async. For those of you who don't know, pipe async is just a feature in Angular that allows us to subscribe to the observable immediately when the component is initialized, and then immediately unsubscribe when the component is removed from the view. So now to iterate over our data, in the ng template, you need to specify the variable name here, which I specified as keyword, and then I specified it again in the label component, keyword. And then, so now when the user types in something, we're getting observable of text input changes called keyword input changes, right? Then what we're doing is we're subscribing to keyword input changes using switch map. We're taking that set of text input changes, going to our pun service, calling a method called suggested keywords, and then it's giving us back an observable of keywords that might match those text input changes. After we get the keywords observable, we're subscribing to it using the pipe async, and then iterating over the data with a for each, and then writing it out to our view. So if I type in B, you'll see that there's two results, banana and bird. Okay, so on the pun service, we had two methods. The second was called get puns. So we have a list of keywords now that match our puns, but we don't actually have our puns. So what we can do now is we can just take that list of keywords and convert it into an observable of puns. And as you can see here, I created a puns method, and it's basically exactly the same code, right? So the get puns method is going to take a list of keywords returned by suggest keywords, and then get a list of puns by calling the get puns method and match those keywords. And for this again, we're just using switch map. So writing those out to the view is also basically exactly the same. We're doing that right here. We're using pipe async to subscribe to the observable. We're using for each to loop over them and write them out to the view. But we're actually doing something a little bit wrong here. So puns found is actually derived, puns is derived from keywords. So if you look over here, we're using pipe async twice, which means we're actually subscribing to the first observable keywords twice. And this is bad because if you actually are connecting this to like an HTTP server, you're making two HTTP calls to get your keywords observable. But there's an operator for that. By the way, this is actually like subscribing and unsubscribing and making your observables multicast is like one of the biggest mistakes that we see when people use RxJS. So to avoid subscribing to an observable multiple times, you need to somehow make your observable multicast. So if you remember, subjects are by default multicast, right? But observables in general are not. So the share operator is what actually does this. So this is going to share a single subscription to that observable with many subscribers. And in this case, it's the pipe asyncs. And basically with that, we've just solved our problem. So yay. So let's look at our prod app again. So as you type something in, it's getting an observable of keywords based on the user's text input. Based on that, it's getting an observable of keywords, and then it's going to match to an observable of puns, and then display those puns. So this is the benefit of same shapedness. Like basically, if you go further with this, with RxJS, it's super easy to add other data sources. All we've been doing is working with observables, and all these observables are observables of arrays of strings, right? And so because they're all the same shape, you can go and get any other observable of keywords. They don't have to be from the user's text input, and then compose them into an observable of puns. So RxJS also has this merge operator that allows you to combine observables without having to really refactor much of the code. And I'll show you that to you guys. So let's get into the demo. This is what my app looks like, right? I mean, it's easy, it's cute, it's pretty. It could be prettier. I'll have to ask Brad to, oh dear, sorry. Thank you. Okay, mirror displays. All right, so if I type in like M, for example, but again, I should probably ask Brad to help me with some of the layout. But anyway, so there's that. I mean, you can scroll through it. It's cute. But the power of RxJS, I feel like, is the ability to just refactor everything, right? So you'll see that I created an application. This is the Angular application, and it's it's almost the same exact application. So it has banana. I'm using Angular material, so it can be pretty. Like I can say egg, for example. Egg! And then it gives me egg puns, like, how do roosters flirt with chickens? They wish chickens an extra special day. Also, you can listen. So with this, I'm using the speech recognition API, and this is my other data source, right? Banana. Oh, well, banana. Egg. Right? Oh, it says egg. Okay, there we go. All right. But also, this is why I have a banana here, because you can also connect to things like the Google, what is it? Google Image API? Vision API, thank you. And it should return bananas for me. Oh, you know why? Because, oh, there we go. It returned bananas. I'll do it again. Whoops. Yep. There we go. And then we have bananas, and my arm, and a finger, and a hand. So that's exciting. And I just want to show you guys the code in this. And if I had time to figure out how the native speech API worked, I would have done it, but I didn't have time to do that. That's what we're doing tonight, Sebastian. I've already provisioned my Android app. All right, so what we did here, so I want to show you guys how easy it is to just wrap APIs and observables. Here's the speech service. So all we did here is just wrap it in the observable constructor, add a little bit of error handling and things like that. And then we're using next for the results instead of what you do with the just the normal API. And I also connected a bunch of other random things like a heat sensor, LED things. Here's the Google Vision one. Sorry, this is the listen one. And then if I go to my pun component, you can see here that the code basically looks exactly the same. So I have a bunch of things. Typed keywords was one of the observable. I think I called it suggested keywords in my other application. And then spoken keywords is what I was using here for the speech, right? And then I have the Google Vision thing right here too. And again, I'm just using switch map. So switch map all the things. And then over here, I'm merging all of those observables, right? Everything like I can speak, I can take a picture of something, I can type in something. And then I'm just merging them, observable.merge right over here. And then I'm going ahead and sharing that, making it multicast. And then the puns found here, I'm just calling the getPuns method, and then it's returning like whatever observable like of arrays of strings that is puns. So getting back to my, I hope that was interesting for you guys. Getting back to my talk. Let me stop mirroring and woo. All right. Oh, there it is. Okay. Okay, so we went through a few things. We went through how to create an observable, best practices, how to choose operators, find documentation, avoiding unwanted subscriptions, wrapping APIs, which was in the Angular application, benefits of same-shapedness. But what's really exciting is what's coming up next for RxJS 6 and 7. So let's talk about that for a second. Right now, there's a prototype version on a private branch of RxJS called T-Rex. I wish I had a T-Rex outfit. It'd be so cute. But right now, if you go ahead and minify, bundle, and gzip all the current operators, it's 300 KB. So if you do the same thing with T-Rex, which has about 60-70% of the operators, it's only 3 KB. Yay! Or 30 KB and 3 KB, 300 KB, oh my God. But you might wonder, how did it get so small? So Ben basically rewrote everything again and implemented a lot of operators in terms of other operators. So he was able to turn a lot of operators into one line of code versus 40 to 50 lines of code. Examples of this would be like the reduce operator is just scan and take last combined, or toArray is just a specialty of reduce. So that's awesome. Other problem is right now all the operators are patched onto the prototype, so that's bad because basically people end up writing libraries and then like people add operators to observable and then people don't realize it and code breaks and it's a mess. So also there's no tree shaking, right? So now lettable operators was just done. Jason Aiden on the Angular team really helped sort of like refactor all these operators into lettable operators. So basically they're just using higher order functions and functional programming to make it more awesome. But in the newest versions, again, you're going to be able to have tree shaking, and it's going to be much easier to create observables. And there's just like a lot of benefits. So there's a lot more coming, but I want to show you guys on GitHub really quickly. So this, just 2 days ago, Jason finished, Oh, again? Did that happen again? Oh, Jason just finished, oh, thank you. Thank you, Sebastian. See, this is why we're friends. So Jason just finished converting all of these. So he just merged it 2 days ago, and they're finally done. Look at Jason. Go, Jason. All right, so that's awesome. So RxJS right now is 5.4.3. 5.5 is going to be released. It's going to be released in a beta because there are going to be these lettable operators in them. So just want to like get you guys familiar with the syntax and different things like that. Also, I think what's going to happen is the import path. I don't remember. I think it's happening in 6 or one of the more like upcoming releases. But you're going to be able to import operators. Just say like import RxJS/operators. There's going to be an operators folder, and then whatever the operator is, so you don't have to import directly from the module path, which is awesome. And then hopefully in 7, you're going to be able to just say like import all of RxJS, and life won't be terrible. So that is basically it, I think. And I'm out of time anyway. Sebastian's trying to get me off. There's lots more to come though.
No. That's a wild accusation. All right, thanks, Tracy.